Hello everyone, I just thought I would do a quick little video showing how you can download and look at bathymetric data for Australia, and then I'm going to use that data in a GIS software so we can actually have a look at the seabed around Byron Bay specifically, just as an exercise. So if you are a boating enthusiast or fishing or diver or surfer, whatever it is that you do in the ocean that sparks your interest in understanding the seabed shape and all of that, this could be a fun video for you. Or if you're just a nerd or a scientist or all those things put together, I hope this will be a fun video. So let's get started. First, you go onto this website, Elvis Elevation. You can just type in on Google, and it's this first link here that comes up. So that's provided by the Commonwealth of Australia, and it has data from many other agencies like Australia government and other agencies. So here you can see the coverage of the data, where you have this orange shade, and some areas will have better coverage than others. So as you can see, here we have some pretty good coverage, here as well, and then some other places like here, right here in Hobart. And other areas we don't have as much coverage. For example, this area in South Australia, Western Australia, probably because there's just, not many people live here, there's not many projects happening, no ports, no big navigation routes or anything like that. So probably no one has surveyed that area yet. But for this exercise, I am going to actually zoom into this region here where Byron Bay is. I used to live there, so I used to dive there a lot. To actually order your data, you just select order data. I'm clicking on this, and then you click on draw. Then you can draw a rectangle around your area of interest. Then you hit search, and it's going to come up with all the data that's available. So you can also see that the land is also in this blue color or other colors, and there is also data for land elevation. But for this exercise, we're actually going to look for bathymetric data. So this one here actually has Topo and bathymetry. And 5 meter is actually pretty good detail. It means that at every 5 meters there is a data point. So I will select this, and as you can see, this is from 2018. So it's not very recent. So probably it won't show us the beach, how it is these days, because because where you have a sandy beach, the sand would have moved around. But it will show us the reefs and other features that are not as variable. And then we can actually have a look. We can see a little bit of the sand movement, which is really cool. Then just for comparison, I'm going to show you guys, when you hover over the data set, you can actually see the coverage of the data set. So when I hover my mouse over this covers actually a pretty large area. And as a rule of thumb, if it covers a large area, it doesn't have as much detail. Here you can actually see that it's 100 meter resolution. So that means that instead of every 5 meters, only at every 100 meter, you're going to have a different number, pretty much. So in this data set here, every 100 meter by 100 meter square, you only have one value. Even though the elevations vary within that square, the data set doesn't actually show you that. So we can select this one too if you want to, just for comparison. I have actually already downloaded the data, and I downloaded the 1 second one, which, as you can see, it's like pretty large coverage too. And another one I'm going to pick is the intertidal. So that's only between low tide and high tide, but it's from 2022, so it's a little bit more up to date, and it would just be a cool comparison to look at sand movements. So after you select what you want, you pick your format. GeoTIFF is a very light format. The file isn't that big, so I selected this. Then here I'm going to use zone 56 GDA 94. That's the projection that I have in my GIS software. Industry, select the industry you're in, and then you can put your email, and then you just hit order 4 datasets, and the download for the link is going to arrive in your email. Then you download all the data. I have done that already. And then we're going to open QGIS. So I'm using QGIS, which is a free open source software. You can download it for free, install it in your computer. And I have already imported some satellite imagery, so I just hit OSMAP imagery, New South Wales 6 map. That's what I have here. And I'm just going to drag that dataset into QGIS. So when I drag it in, as you can see, it all comes like black and white. Doesn't really help much to see the data. So I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to change my symbology to single band pseudo color, and then now I have a gradient, which makes things prettier. But it's showing me red in low elevations and blue in high elevations, and I actually want the opposite. So I'm going to invert color ramp, because now I have blue where I have deep water and red where I have land. So it makes a little bit more sense. I'm going to apply that, and this is what I get. But now I'm actually going to change the min and max value settings to the mean standard deviation for updated canvas, actual slower. Hit apply. And now what that happens is it changes the scale a little bit. So when I zoom into the data set, you see that the scale changes. So I can actually, if I want to find out the highest point in this headland, I can keep zooming in, and my highest points probably down this end, these squares. That's probably where the lighthouse is actually. Yeah, that's exactly where the lighthouse is. So just for comparison, you can see that this data set actually doesn't have anything for bathymetry. It only has topography. So this is not what we are looking for. So now I'm going to actually toggle on my 5-meter bathymetry. This one here I have already changed the transparency a little bit, so you can see the imagery underneath. And I've created a copy of it where I applied this hue shade. So here I have a hue shade with a Z factor of 3. And that gives me this cool 3D vision, and this 3D effect, which is really nice. And if we compare this data set to the previous one we had before, so in the 1 second one, if I measure the grid cell size, this is about 27 by 30 meters. And now this one here, as we would expect, I have to zoom in much more to be able to measure, but it's actually about 5 meters by 5 meters. So it's a much more detailed data set. That's why, of course, it's a 5-meter data set, as it says on the name. So here we can actually see much more detail, and we can see what's happening in the water. So I'm going to make it a little bit brighter. So one thing that I found interesting is that you can see really well the middle reef here. If you have ever been to Byron, so like this is the beach. We usually surf here in these areas, and sometimes you can see waves breaking on the middle reef. And I went checking the depth, and it's actually a quite shallow reef. So if I have the value tool toggled on, so I can see the value here wherever I hover my mouse. And here it's only about like 2.5 meters deep, which is really not much, 2 to 3. So it's like super accessible for a dive. I mean, very accessible for a snorkel or whatever it is. And then here it gets a little bit deeper. Here we have a deeper hole of about 9 meters, still not that deep. And then something that I found interesting as well. So when you look at the satellite imagery, you can see that there is these islands here. That's Julian Rocks. I used to go diving there a lot. But you can't tell that there's actually this whole reef up the top. And when I switch this on, you can see that there's this whole shallow area here. That's only about, what, 16, 14, 15 meters depth, which is still quite accessible, like on a free dive or on a scuba. And I had been diving over this region here, just to the east, to the west of the island. But I didn't know that this whole area here is shallow. So, yeah, and this is only about 10 meters, 9, 8 meters depth. Then on the other side, it drops a bit more, drops to 19. And then here, I actually have a much deeper area of about 30, 32, 33 meters, which is quite deep. But I actually heard stories that this whole region here used to connect by land during the time of where it was only indigenous people on this land. And I mean, I don't know if that's a true story, but it's interesting. And you can see that this is all quite shallow. It's only about, 15, 16 meters. Then here you can see where you have some deeper holes of 30 meters. But yeah, it's really cool. And then now just the last thing I'll show you guys is the intertidal and how we can see how the beach changed and how the sand changed. So this is our 2022 intertidal dataset. And just to compare with our... So in this photo here, you can see that there's not much sand on the beach. It's quite eroded. You can see rocks exposed here. That's probably why you can actually see the reef that well too. There's not much sand. There's a little bit of sand here, but overall it's quite eroded. And when we look at our 5-meter bathymetry, we can see that here there was still a bit more of sand. If you look here on the value tool, you can see that's still 60 meters above sea level, or the Australian height datum. And here we start getting a bit deeper values. So here we start getting a bit deeper water. But now if we put the intertidal 2022 on, it looks like the sand was coming all the way up here. So here now, I'm going to put the transparency a little bit higher. So here we have about 40 centimeters high. And for 2018, that was 1.4 meters depth. So that's how much the sandbank changed from that date from 2018 to 2022. I mean, it could have been a seasonal change as well between summer and winter. Beaches change a lot within the months, the seasons, as you would have known by going to the beach and seeing it change. Then if we zoom out, we actually get a different photo from the satellite data. And here you can see how much more sand there is. So this profile here is a little bit more aligned with the intertidal, even for this beach here at Watergoals. I thought I would also show you guys how to look at this in a 3D map. So to get a 3D map, just click on View, 3D Map Views, New 3D Map View. And then it's going to start loading, and you're going to get the same extent and symbology you have in your workspace. And then now if you click on the scrolling button on your mouse, and as you click you drag it, you can change the angle of your camera. So I'm gonna put it like on an oblique angle, and I'll hit configure terrain, DEM, and then I have to pick my DEM layer, my digital elevation model layer. I'll keep the vertical scale as 1, so it's quite realistic. Sometimes if you're looking only at bathymetry, it's good to put the vertical scale a bit higher. But here I'm going to be looking at topography and bathymetry, so I'll just leave it at 1. I'll hit apply. And then I can actually put the transparency to 0. And now as I zoom in, you can see the elevations on the beach. Yeah, so here you can actually see pretty well how the elevations are in this area. And from experience, this is quite realistic. So here you have like this high headland protecting from north winds on this beach. You can see here the compass, and you can really have a look at the topography of the town. You can see the low-lying areas, and here we have a bit of a creek. Yeah, and you can see quite well the elevations here around the lighthouse and water goals. Yeah, and you can explore, find a good hill to watch the sunset and explore the topography around the region. So yeah, that was all I had to show to you guys today. Hope it was a fun exercise to you. If you like the video, you can hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever. If you have any doubts, you can ask. And then this way as well I can know that you guys are interested in this kind of content and I can make more. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have fun exploring a little bit at home of some bathymetric datasets. And I'll see you next time. And if you don't follow Sand Talk on the socials, you can follow on Instagram and TikTok. And you can also check the website. It's all on the description. And I'll see you next time.